At 62, I proved everyone wrong. Here's exactly how my emotional comeback story. I sat in Dr. Morrison's office on a Tuesday morning in March, watching dust particles float through the shaft of sunlight cutting across his desk. My hands were trembling, not the gentle shake of age, but something deeper, more primal. Fear has a specific frequency, and my body was vibrating at exactly that pitch. "Robert, the tests came back," he said, sliding the folder across his desk like he was dealing cards in a game I didn't want to play. "Your A1C is 9.2. Your liver enzymes are elevated. Your blood pressure is 170 over 105, even with the medication." I nodded, pretending I understood what those numbers meant beyond the obvious. I was dying, just slower than a heart attack, faster than old age. "You're looking at type 2 diabetes, stage 2 hypertension, and early signs of fatty liver disease." He paused, and in that pause I heard everything he wasn't saying. "Robert, at your current trajectory, you're looking at insulin dependence within 18 months, potential kidney damage, vision problems. The works." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone laughed in the hallway. The normal world kept spinning while mine ground to a halt. I was 62 years old, and I'd just been handed an expiration date. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was sitting in my truck in the parking lot afterward, calling my daughter Sarah to tell her I couldn't watch the grandkids this weekend because I had a doctor's appointment, lying because I couldn't bear to hear the worry in her voice, and realizing I'd been lying to myself for 20 years. The drive home took 12 minutes. I counted every one of them, watching strip malls and traffic lights blur past, thinking about how I'd gotten here. The answer was simple and devastating. One choice at a time, one compromise at a time, one "I'll start tomorrow" at a time. My wife Linda was at work. The house echoed with emptiness. I stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd raised 3 kids, celebrated birthdays, argued about money, made up over coffee, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually felt alive in my own life. The refrigerator hummed its judgment. Inside, leftover pizza, a case of beer, condiments, and shame. I'd weighed 187 pounds on my wedding day. This morning's scale said 276. The math was brutal, 89 pounds of accumulated surrender. My phone buzzed. Text from my boss: "Can you cover Jerry's shift Saturday?" I was a night manager at a warehouse distribution center. $43 an hour to supervise the movement of consumer goods nobody needed through a building that smelled like cardboard and diesel fuel. I'd started there as temporary in 1998. 24 years of temporary. The real knife: I'd had dreams once. I'd wanted to open a woodworking shop. I'd filled notebooks with designs for custom furniture. I'd spent weekends in my garage building pieces that Linda swore were beautiful enough to sell. "Someday," I'd always said, "when we have the money, when the kids are grown, when I retire." Someday had turned into never, and never was staring at me with my doctor's eyes, holding test results that said my someday account was overdrawn. That night, Linda came home to find me sitting in the dark garage, running my hand across an unfinished oak table I'd started 7 years ago. She didn't turn on the light. She just sat down next to me on the concrete floor, her shoulder touching mine. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad enough." She took my hand. Hers was smaller, warmer, steady. "Then we fix it." I wanted to believe her, but what happened next shocked even me. The next morning, Wednesday, I woke up at 4:47 a.m. to the sound of my phone ringing. Linda answered it before I could fully surface from sleep. I heard her voice change, that particular pitch that meant bad news, the kind that requires you to sit down. "Robert," she was shaking my shoulder. "Robert, wake up, it's your brother." David, my younger brother by 3 years, the successful one. The one who'd started a tech company in Austin, sold it for $8 million, retired at 55, spent his time doing triathlons and posting photos from Bali. What about David? Linda's face was white in the pre-dawn darkness. He had a massive heart attack at the gym. Robert, he didn't make it. The room tilted. David was dead. David, who'd done everything right. David, who ate kale and ran marathons and had a personal trainer and a home gym and probably knew his A1C level by heart. The funeral was Saturday. I stood in my too tight black suit, sweating in the Dallas heat, watching my sister-in-law Katie receive condolences with the hollow eyes of the newly shattered. Their kids, both in their 20s, looked lost. At the reception, Katie pulled me aside. Her makeup was smudged, her hands were shaking. "Robert, I need to tell you something about David." We stepped into her kitchen, away from the crowd. "He was drowning in debt," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The company's sale, most of it went to settling lawsuits from investors. The house, the cars, the trips, it was all leveraged. We owe $740,000 to creditors. The life insurance won't cover half of it." I stared at her, but all the photos, the lifestyle. Fake, all of it. He was miserable, Robert. The pressure to maintain the image, to keep performing, it was killing him. His doctor told him to slow down 6 months ago. He laughed it off. She gripped my arm. "Don't make his mistake. Don't wait until it's too late." I drove home in silence, Linda asleep in the passenger seat. My brother, the golden child, had literally worked himself to death chasing an image that was already bankrupt. Monday morning, I went back to work. Tuesday, I had my regular shift. Wednesday, I was called into the operations manager's office. "Robert, we're restructuring." Mark Chen didn't meet my eyes. "Your position is being eliminated. We're consolidating the night shift management. We're offering you a severance package, 6 months salary, health insurance through the end of the year." 24 years, gone. When? My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. 2 weeks. I'm sorry, Robert. You're a good worker, but the numbers don't lie. I cleaned out my desk on Thursday. $43 an hour times 40 hours times 6 months. The math echoed in my head. $44,640, minus taxes, roughly $32,000. Our mortgage was $1,847 a month. Linda made $38,000 a year as a dental hygienist. We had $14,000 in savings. That night I told Linda. She cried. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears that hurt worse than screaming. "What are we going to do?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. Friday morning, I woke up and my left hand was numb, completely numb. I tried to make a fist and couldn't feel my fingers. Panic shot through me like electricity. "Linda," my voice cracked. "Linda. Something's wrong." She rushed in, took one look at my face and grabbed her keys. "We're going to the ER, now." The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and worried faces and the smell of antiseptic. They ran tests. EKG, blood work, neurological exam. 4 hours of waiting and wondering if this was it, if I was having a stroke, if this was how my story ended. Dr. Patel finally came in, a young resident with kind eyes and news that shattered what was left of my world. "Mr. Harrison, you're not having a stroke, but your glucose level is 340. You're in a hyperglycemic crisis. The numbness is peripheral neuropathy, nerve damage from uncontrolled diabetes." He paused. "We need to admit you. We need to get your blood sugar under control immediately, or you're at serious risk for diabetic coma." I spent 3 days in the hospital. They pumped me full of insulin, adjusted my medications, and sent a diabetes educator to my room who explained in excruciating detail how I'd been slowly poisoning myself for years. The bill arrived 2 weeks later, $28,000. With insurance, $8,400 out of pocket. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by medical bills, severance paperwork, and the crushing weight of my own failures. 62 years old, unemployed, sick, broke, my brother dead, my body failing, my dreams abandoned in a dusty garage. Linda found me there at 2 a.m., my head in my hands. "I've destroyed everything," I said, "everything." She pulled up a chair, her face illuminated by the overhead light. "No, you haven't, but you're at a choice point, Robert. You can let this destroy you, or you can let it wake you up." "Wake me up to what? I'm 62, I'm sick, I'm unemployed, what's the point?" What she said next changed everything. "The point is you're still breathing. The point is David isn't, and he'd give anything to have your problems. The point is we have 6 months of severance, and you have skills in your hands that you've been ignoring for 24 years. She grabbed my hand, the numb one, forced me to look at her. "The point is you get to decide what the next chapter looks like. You can spend it dying slowly in front of the TV, or you can spend it building something worth living for." I looked at her, this woman who'd stood by me through every failure, every compromise, every broken promise. "I don't know how," I whispered. "Then we figure it out, together." That was April 12th. I remember the date because I wrote it down on the first page of a new notebook. I'd stopped writing things down years ago, but Linda bought me a fresh notebook and a good pen, and she said, "Start." The first thing I wrote: Day 1, age 62, weight 276, A1C 9.2, bank account $14,000, time remaining unknown, goal figure out what the hell I'm doing. The truth was hiding in plain sight all along. I spent the next week doing something I hadn't done in decades. I got quiet. I stopped filling every moment with noise and distraction. I sat in my garage and really looked at what I'd built over the years. 15 pieces of furniture, a dining table, 2 end tables, a bookshelf, a jewelry box, a chest. Each one represented hours of focus, of craftsmanship, of something I couldn't quite name. Love, that was it. I'd loved making these things. Linda invited Sarah over, told her about my health, about the job. Sarah, my oldest, my practical one, looked at me with eyes that reminded me too much of my own mother. "Dad, what's the plan?" "I'm going to start a woodworking business." The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought. Sarah's expression flickered between concern and disbelief. "Dad, you're 62. You just lost your job. You have serious health issues. This seems like..." "A terrible idea," I finished. "Yeah, probably is. But here's what I couldn't explain to her. I was going to die anyway. We all are. The only question was what I'd build with the time I had left." I started researching that night. How to start a small business. How to reverse diabetes naturally. How to build a customer base. How to price custom furniture. The internet was a rabbit hole of information and contradiction. For every success story, there were 10 warnings about failure rates and market saturation and the impossibility of competing with mass production. I almost quit on day 3. Then I found a video. A guy named James Martinez, 74 years old, talking about starting his custom knife-making business at 68. He was in his workshop, hands steady despite his age, showing a Damascus steel blade he'd forged himself. "People told me I was too old," he said to the camera. "I told them I'd rather die trying than die wondering." I watched that video 12 times. On day 5, I went back to Dr. Morrison. "I need you to help me reverse this," I said, sliding my notebook across his desk. "Not manage it, reverse it. What do I need to do?" He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Robert, type 2 diabetes isn't really reversible." "Bullshit," I said it calmly but firmly. "I've been reading, I've seen the studies, people have done it. What do I need to do?" He leaned back, studied me. "You're serious?" "I'm dying anyway. Might as well die trying." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "Okay, here's the hard truth. It's possible, but it requires complete lifestyle transformation. Diet, exercise, stress management, sleep. Everything changes." "Tell me." He did. For 45 minutes, he laid out a protocol that sounded impossible. Cut all processed foods, eliminate sugar completely, exercise daily, track everything, lose 60 pounds minimum. It would take 12 to 18 months of perfect adherence. Perfect adherence, I repeated. Or as close as humanly possible. One bad weekend can set you back weeks. I drove home, stopped at the grocery store, spent $247 on vegetables, chicken breast, brown rice, and ingredients I'd never cooked with before. Linda met me at the door. "What's all this?" "Our new life." That first week was hell, actual physical hell. Sugar withdrawal gave me headaches that felt like my skull was splitting. My body screamed for pizza, for beer, for the comfort foods that had been slowly killing me. I couldn't sleep. I was irritable. I snapped at Linda twice and had to apologize both times. But I kept a log, every meal, every symptom, every small victory. On day 7, I stepped on the scale, 271, 5 pounds gone. It wasn't much, but it was something. I started walking, just around the block at first because that's all I could manage without my knees aching. 20 minutes the first day, 22 the second. By the end of week 2, I was up to 30 minutes, and the numbness in my left hand had reduced from constant to occasional. Week 3, I posted photos of my furniture on Facebook Marketplace. The dining table I'd made 7 years ago, the one I'd been running my hand across the night of my diagnosis. I priced it at $800, figuring nobody would bite. It sold in 4 hours. The buyer was a young couple, mid-30s, setting up their first real home. They showed up in a truck, and the husband, Marcus, ran his hand across the table the same way I had. "This is beautiful, man. Did you really make this yourself?" "Yeah. You should do this professionally." "I'm thinking about it." They loaded it up, and Marcus handed me $800 bills. I hadn't held that much cash in years, but what I discovered next changed everything. Marcus came back 3 days later, knocked on my door. "Hey, Robert, weird question, would you teach me?" "Teach you what?" "Woodworking, I'll pay you. My dad used to build things and he passed last year. I never learned. I want to learn." I almost said no. Almost told him I wasn't qualified to teach anyone anything. But Linda was listening from the kitchen and she called out, "He'd love to." I charged Marcus $50 for a 2-hour session. We started with basic joinery, and I realized something profound. Teaching forced me to articulate why I did things certain ways, to understand my own process deeply enough to transfer it. He came back the next week, and the week after. By week 6, he'd brought a friend. By week 8, I had 4 students, $200 a week in cash, and a waiting list. The money wasn't the point. The point was I'd stumbled into something sustainable, scalable, meaningful. My blood sugar was dropping. Week 8 weigh-in, 254, 22 pounds gone. My A1C retested, 7.8, still diabetic but trending in the right direction. But then came the moment that almost broke me completely. It was week 10, early June, hot. I was in the garage working on a commission piece, a rocking chair for a client who'd seen my work online. My phone rang, unknown number. "Mr. Harrison, this is Rebecca Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling about your mortgage." My stomach dropped. "We've noticed you've missed your last payment, and according to our records, you're no longer employed. We need to discuss your options." The severance had run out faster than expected. Medical bills had eaten most of it. Linda's income covered groceries and utilities barely. I'd been telling myself I could make up the mortgage payment with furniture sales and teaching, but the math wasn't there yet. "How far behind are we?" I asked, though I knew. "1 payment. But Mr. Harrison, given your employment situation, we need to discuss whether you're able to continue meeting your obligations." I had 30 days to catch up or face foreclosure proceedings. I hung up and sat down hard on my workshop stool. The rocking chair mocked me, half-finished, beautiful and useless. I'd been building dreams while my real life collapsed. Linda found me there an hour later. I told her everything. "How much do we need?" she asked. $1,847, plus late fees, probably close to $2,000. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother's ring. "What?" "The diamond ring my mother left me. It's worth at least $3,000. We pawn it, catch up the mortgage, buy ourselves time." "Linda, no, that ring is a piece of metal and stone. Our home is where we raised our children. It's where you're building your new life. It's worth more than sentiment." We pawned the ring the next day. Got $2,800. Caught up the mortgage with $953 to spare. That's when I made the decision that saved everything. I couldn't keep doing this halfway. Either I went all in on the woodworking business, or I got a regular job and gave up the dream entirely. There was no middle ground. I made a spreadsheet. Everything I'd earned in the last 10 weeks, $3,200 from furniture sales, $1,800 from teaching, $5,000 total. Divided by 10 weeks, $500 per week average. Times 52 weeks, $26,000 annually. Not enough, not even close. But then I looked at the trends. Week 1, $200. Week 10, $800. The trajectory was exponential, not linear. I sat down with Linda that night and showed her the numbers. If the trend continues, by week 20, I could be making $1,500 a week. By week 30, maybe $2,000. But that's if I scale. If I get serious about marketing, about production, about building this into a real business. What do you need? Tools, better equipment, a real workshop setup, marketing, website, business license, insurance. I'd need at least $8,000 to do it right. We had $953. Linda pulled out her laptop, opened a browser, and searched small business loans for seniors. 3 hours later, we'd filled out applications for 7 different microloan programs. 3 weeks after that, we got approved for one. $10,000 at 7.5% interest, 36-month term. I'll never forget signing those papers. My hands shook. This was real debt, real obligation, real risk. If this failed, we'd be worse off than before. But I signed. The money hit our account on July 3rd. On July 4th, I ordered equipment, a cabinet saw, a planer, a jointer, professional-grade tools I'd been drooling over for years. I hired a local college kid, Brandon, to build me a website. I registered Harrison Custom Woodworks as an LLC. I got business cards printed. I was 62 years old, and I was starting over from scratch. Week 15, I got a call from a designer in Dallas. She'd seen my work online and wanted to discuss a commission for a restaurant opening downtown. Custom tables, booths, shelving, 12 pieces total. Budget, $24,000. I nearly dropped the phone. "When would you need them?" 16 weeks, can you do it? I did the math in my head. 16 weeks, 12 pieces. That was roughly 1 piece every 1.3 weeks. Tight but doable, maybe. "Yes," I said, before I could talk myself out of it. I hung up and immediately panicked. What had I just committed to? This was the biggest job I'd ever taken. If I failed, I'd destroy my reputation before I'd even built one. But the truth was hiding in plain sight all along. I didn't have to do it alone. I called Marcus, my first student. "How would you like a paid apprenticeship?" "Seriously?" "Seriously. $20 an hour, part-time, flexible hours. I've got a big commission and I need help." He started the next week. Then I brought on 2 more of my students part-time. Suddenly, I had a team. The work was brutal. I was in the workshop by 6 a.m., working until 10 p.m. some nights. My body ached. My hands developed calluses on top of calluses, but something remarkable was happening. I was getting stronger, not weaker. The daily physical labor combined with my strict diet was transforming my body. Week 20 weigh-in, 238, 38 pounds gone. A1C retest, 6.9, still technically diabetic but barely. Dr. Morrison was stunned. Robert, I've never seen changes this dramatic. Turns out dying was great motivation. But the real test came in week 18. I was working late, cutting pieces for one of the restaurant tables when I felt it. A sharp, crushing pain in my chest. My left arm went numb. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Heart attack. I managed to pull out my phone, dial 911, and unlock the front door before I collapsed. The paramedics found me on the workshop floor, conscious but barely. The ride to the hospital was sirens and questions and terror. All I could think was, not now, not when I'm finally building something. Linda met me in the ER, her face white. They ran tests, EKG, blood work, chest x-ray. The young ER doctor came in and I braced for the worst. Mr. Harrison, you didn't have a heart attack. What? You had an anxiety attack. A severe one but not cardiac in origin. Your heart is actually in remarkable shape for someone your age, especially given your recent history. I stared at him. I'm not dying. Not today, but you need to manage your stress levels. What you're doing to your body physically is working, but you're burning yourself out mentally. He prescribed anti-anxiety medication, which I refused. Instead, I started meditating, 20 minutes every morning. It felt ridiculous at first, a guy like me sitting cross-legged on the garage floor trying to empty my mind. But it worked. The restaurant commission took 19 weeks instead of 16. The designer was understanding. When we delivered the final pieces, she cried. Robert, this is beyond what I imagined. You've created art. She paid the full $24,000, plus a $3,000 bonus. I stood in my garage that night, staring at the check, and realized something profound. I just made more money in 5 months doing what I loved than I'd made in 6 months at the warehouse doing what I hated. Week 28, I went back to Dr. Morrison for my quarterly checkup. Weight 212, 64 pounds gone. A1C 5.6, non-diabetic range. Blood pressure 118/76, normal. Liver enzymes, normal. He looked at the results, then at me, then back at the results. Robert, I need to document this for a medical journal. This is extraordinary. Document away. Just know it nearly killed me to get here. But it didn't, that's the point. I was 63 now, 1 year into my transformation. My business was generating $4,800 a month on average. Not enough to get rich, but enough to live. Enough to pay the mortgage. Enough to save a little. Enough to breathe. But what happened next tested everything I'd built. It was February, cold. I was working on a custom entertainment center for a client when my phone rang. Sarah. Dad, it's Mom. She's in the hospital. You need to come now. I dropped everything and drove. Linda had collapsed at work, severe chest pains. They were running tests. I sat in the same waiting room where I'd waited a year earlier, except now I was the one in terror for someone else. The doctor came out, and his face told me everything I needed to know. Your wife has a significant blockage in her left anterior descending artery. We need to do an emergency angioplasty. She's stable now, but this is serious. Linda had been taking care of everyone else, while her own heart was failing. The procedure took 3 hours. When I finally saw her, she looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors making her seem fragile in a way I'd never seen. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For scaring you, for not taking care of myself. I've been so focused on you getting healthy, I ignored my own symptoms. I took her hand. Then we do for you what we did for me, together. She came home 3 days later with a stent in her artery and a list of restrictions that looked eerily familiar. Diet, exercise, stress management, medication compliance. The next 6 months were about her transformation. I cooked for her, walked with her, supported her the way she'd supported me. My business had to take a backseat. I scaled back to 2 or 3 pieces a month, just enough to keep money coming in. But here's what I learned. You can't sustain a transformation if you're doing it alone. Linda had sacrificed herself for my healing. Now it was my turn. By August, she'd lost 30 pounds. Her cholesterol was down. Her energy was back. And she'd started doing something unexpected. She began handling the business side of Harrison Custom Woodworks. "You're an artist," she said, "but you're a terrible businessman. Let me handle the money, the scheduling, the client communications." I've been trying to do everything. Letting her take over the business operations freed me to focus on the actual craft. Revenue jumped from $4,800 a month to $7,200 within 6 weeks. I was 64 now, 2.5 years into this journey. My body was strong. My marriage was stronger. My business was growing. My health markers were all normal. But the ultimate test that proved everything was real came on a Saturday in October. I got a call from a producer at a regional home improvement show. They wanted to feature local craftspeople, and my name had come up. "Would you be interested in demonstrating your work on live TV?" My immediate instinct was to say no. I was nobody. I wasn't camera ready. I'd embarrass myself. But then I remembered. 2.5 years ago, I'd been unemployed, sick, broke, and ready to give up. If I could transform that, I could handle a TV camera. Yes. The segment aired 3 weeks later. I demonstrated building a live-edge coffee table, talked about my journey from warehouse manager to craftsman, mentioned my health transformation along the way. I thought maybe 50 people would see it. Within 24 hours, my website crashed from traffic. My email inbox had 340 messages. My phone rang constantly. People wanted to buy furniture. People wanted to learn woodworking. People wanted to hear more of my story. A publisher reached out about writing a book. A podcast invited me on as a guest. A national furniture retailer asked about wholesale pricing. I was overwhelmed, terrified, exhilarated. Linda sat me down that night. "Robert, you're at another choice point. You can keep this small and manageable, or you can scale this into something bigger, but you can't do both. What do you think I should do?" "I think you should ask yourself what you want your legacy to be." I thought about David, my brother, who'd built an empire that was hollow at the core. I thought about the last 24 years in a warehouse, moving boxes nobody needed. I thought about the furniture I'd built, pieces that would outlive me, that would be in homes long after I was gone. "I want to teach," I said. "Not just woodworking. I want to teach people that it's never too late, that your body can heal, that you can rebuild at any age." "Then do that." Within 6 months, I'd launched an online course. Never Too Late, Craftsmanship and Transformation After 60. It combined woodworking tutorials with the health protocols that had saved my life. I priced it at $197, figuring I'd get maybe 20 students. I got 340 in the first month. That's $66,780 in 1 month. From something I'd almost not done because I thought I was too old, too sick, too late. I hired help. I brought on Marcus full-time as my lead instructor. I rented a proper workshop space. I invested in video equipment to produce better content. I was 65 now, 3 years into my transformation. Medicare kicked in, saving us $800 a month in insurance costs. Social Security added another $2,100 monthly. My business was generating between $15,000 and $20,000 per month. Linda and I sat down on our 38th wedding anniversary and looked at our finances. We'd gone from $14,000 in savings and mounting debt to $87,000 in savings and zero debt, except the business loan, which we paid off early. But the numbers weren't the real transformation. The real transformation was this. I woke up every morning excited to work. My body felt 20 years younger. My marriage was stronger than it had been in decades. I was building things that mattered, teaching people who wanted to learn, living a life that felt authentic. On my 66th birthday, Sarah threw me a party. All 3 kids were there, plus 7 grandchildren, plus my students, plus clients who'd become friends. Marcus gave a speech. 3 years ago, Robert sold me a table. That table changed my life because it led me to him, and he taught me that it's never too late to build something beautiful, not just furniture, a life. I looked around the room at faces I loved, at a life I'd built from ruins, and I understood something fundamental. We're never too late until we decide we are. The medical diagnosis that felt like a death sentence had been a wake-up call. The job loss that felt like failure had been liberation. The financial crisis that felt like the end had been a beginning. Every disaster had been a doorway, but only because I'd chosen to walk through instead of sitting down and giving up. Today, I'm 66 years old. I weigh 195 pounds. My A1C is 5.3. My blood pressure is 115/72. I take 0 medications for diabetes because I don't have diabetes anymore. I run a business that generates more money than I made in my corporate job, doing work I love, teaching people who want to learn, building things that will outlast me. But more than any of that, I'm alive. Fully, completely, authentically alive in a way I haven't been since I was young. People ask me all the time, "Robert, how did you do it?" The answer is simpler than they expect. I decided that dying slowly was worse than the risk of failing spectacularly. I chose hard work over slow decay. I chose transformation over comfort. I chose to prove everyone wrong, including myself. At 62, I was finished. At 66, I'm just getting started. And if you're reading this, wondering if it's too late for you, let me save you some time. It's not. It's never too late to build something beautiful. Not furniture. Your life. Start now.